Good afternoon, everyone. Today is August 21st. Thank you all for coming to our special called work session here at Madison County Courthouse Annex in our fiscal courtroom at 135 West Irvin Street here on the first floor. This time I'd like to call this meeting to order. Clerk Barger, if you will, please call the roll.
Master Combs. Here. Master Lockmuller.
Here.
Master Hughes.
Here.
Master Botkin.
Present.
Judge Taylor.
Here. Just remember that this is a special call work session. So the only things that are on the agenda is the only thing we can discuss. And the only discussion topic today, other than announcing our next meeting, is to discuss the Madison County Emergency Communications Center, also known as the MCECC. It's 911 funding. We're going to have discussion today. As you all sort of gave us the nod at our last fiscal court meeting about going back and looking at different methodologies, different pricing structures for a potential, I want to stress potential, methodology of collecting a 911 fee through water meters instead of it being on landline phones, which it has been since 2008. It would be switched to the methodology would be water meters. So Jill, Chris, they've been working pretty hard the last several days. I'm trying to prepare some information for you all so that we could get a better understanding of what this could potentially mean to the unincorporated limits of the county. So, Jill, if you want to sort of go over the things that you and Chris worked on.
Sure. Thanks, Judge. As he mentioned, and you all have in front of you a worksheet, we also have it on the screen here so we can kind of look and have some discussions of what that looks like from a financial perspective based on the number of meters that we have. We have been working with our utility partners, obviously, and getting their meter counts and the data in which they have in their existing utility systems, which is obviously advantageous because they already have all of this information and they bill their customers every month already based on either a residential or we're calling it non-residential, sometimes referred to as commercial. Those rates are actually the same. The only difference is if you're a commercial, you do have to pay sales tax. And so you are categorized differently by all utility companies based on the tax requirement, which is part of state law, that they have to charge on that now. So that has been a change in the last few years. I think we've learned. So, but we have gotten all that information from the utility companies. Obviously, we all know we've got 5 utility providers here in Madison County. You can see the number of commercial or residential meters that they have in each district. At the bottom of your sheet, you'll see that we have a total of 18,705 meters. 17,831 of those are residential, and 874 of those are commercial.
These are just in the these are just in the unincorporated limits.
Yes, and so unincorporated, by saying the unincorporated limits, that is obviously you're not in the city of Richmond nor the city of Berea. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I know citizens get confused because maybe they have a Richmond address or a Berea address, but if they don't get a city tax bill, then they are in the unincorporated areas of the county. So you can see we've looked at it a couple of different models here. If you look at the top, it's pretty self-explanatory what that would be on a monthly or an annual basis, starting at, and we have this up in a spreadsheet here so we can kind of play with the numbers as we go through the work session and have discussion on how that impacts the overall financials. But starting at a $3 monthly fee, what that looks like, all the way to a $4.50 monthly fee and what that looks like. So I guess we can kind of go from there. You all tell me how much you want to walk through that. As you go down the spreadsheet, obviously, you can see that the county portion of 911 expense is based on the FY25 budget or the FY26 budget. And our contribution would be up to $1,018,640. And then what our revenue collections would be versus what the net plus or minus would be and what contribution we would have to provide. So this is based on the FY26 budget number, which obviously starts in July 1, 2025.
It's got FY25 budget on there, but just change it to 26, so you won't get confused if you go home
Yeah,
and look at it.
I saw my typo as I was talking, so. But, you can see what that looks like if you did a $3, for residential and then $10.50 for non-residential or commercial. And that would be based on how it's already categorized by the utility companies
That'd be per month.
per month.
Well, it's plain to see that the first three, we run a little bit deficit, which we don't, the last one gives us a little bit of a surplus. But, I jump right in there pretty quick. I say, okay, well, what happens if we take that third, scenario and make the commercial $18 instead of $15?
Well, I'll tell you what it says. So just for purposes of that, I changed it, you can see it on the screen there. That would go from that deficit that you see in front of you to a $17,506.24 surplus.
So, I like holding that $4 for the residential, and if you look at if the same logic holds that the commercial accounts for over half the calls, the 911 calls, it would be reasonable to bump up the commercial fee like that, just a little bit. And still, it would, but that's my 2 cents.
Well, and I think that, obviously we know and have really dove into call data a lot. I mean, you all were part of that conversation of what that looked like in the overall county picture. One thing we do have to remember from a county, unincorporated county perspective is we have far more single-family residential.
When you split us up 3 ways,
Ways.
you
Yeah.
look at it 3 different.
Well,
it
still,
paints 3 different
But
pictures.
the same logic applies. To
Yeah.
your point, the exact same logic applies. But I think we have to be careful in saying that because obviously there's greater risk. We know that. I mean, I'm going to use Okanite as an example. Okanite, there's greater risk than there is at I don't live in the county, so.
Union City Grocery.
It's your house. It's your house. And so I think that, from that perspective, I think, yes, the same logic would apply.
Now, one thing that,
Here you go.
Did we account for the 10%?
We made a choice not to because it's gonna fluctuate.
one thing too that, just to think about it is, the task force, and I want everybody to understand this budget that we're running all these numbers off of was sort of created by the task force, which was made up of Richmond city manager, police chief, Richmond. At the time, the city administrator, Rose Beverly, was here, and now the new city administrator, Sean Sandlin, was fire chief. They were on there with Chris and our chief, Tim Gray. Wendy was on there, and then we had Mission Critical Consulting on there helping us. But they're the ones that came up with this, the overall financial model and how much we needed and projected it out for, I think, Chris, 20 years. Was that pretty close, 20 years?
7 budget years, 20 in the capital
Okay.
replacement.
All right. So in these numbers is sort of projected increases of cost, capital costs. So we call it in the budget life cycle replacement. There could be capital projects. What I'm getting at is that, we talked about in being able to make sure that there is enough money in future years, future elected officials, future citizens, that you could put in the language that there's an automatic increase of the CPI. So, and I'm just bringing this up, Billy Ray, because, if you put it in and you write it in that it automatically increases unless the fiscal court acts. Fiscal court could act every year that we don't want it to increase by the CPI. But if you write it in your ordinance that it could, then you're getting a little bit of increase to keep up with inflation, to keep up with, rising cost of utilities. I think sometimes citizens think that in a year's time, expenses in your own home go up, but it doesn't go up for government. It goes up for government too. I the cost of fuel goes up for government, just like it does for me and my personal vehicle. The cost, utility costs, groceries, so on and so forth, still goes up. So that's why you have a cost of living index that's calculated every year. So that's just something to think about. That we don't always have to get every penny of it today. You know, we could allow it to come with an automatic increase if the fiscal courts choose every year to not do it. And so we have had some of that discussion. So I just wanted y'all to be aware of that.
I think also too, something you gotta consider in discussion with the water company is that even though that, let's say you do $4.50 a meter, $4 a meter, if somebody doesn't pay that water bill, then you don't get that. Water company doesn't get that either. So there is some risk to it. So even though you may show a surplus in either of those categories, you may not have a surplus at the end of the year.
So I think that's I think that's also a great point. You know, we had kind of looked at even putting a accounts receivable of what that outstanding could be, or what that would look like. In looking and really kind of diving into the water meter data, we realize it's active data. So there's people who come online every month. There's people who get turned off every month, and every day, every time we look at them, hey, it's going to be different. There may be one here, one down here, one up there. So as you kind of look at those, they kind of balance out. You know, we know there'll be some collections that we may not receive, but we also know there may be a new neighborhood that comes on that to get people added. So as we've kind of looked at it financially, we talked about putting, hey, let's account for 8%. Let's account for 10% of, I'm going to say, lost revenue. But after we kind of looked at it, then you'd have to account for the growth as well. So it kind of creates some balance, or at least that was the thinking. And when we kind of really dove into it a little bit. I think the other thing to put out too, and I know you are going to kind of study on this and what the dollars look like. I think that we do, you know, I think we have a good understanding of the budget and what that looks like. I think there's some benefit in looking at currently citizens across our county, our unincorporated county, they're paying $3.50 right now every month on a landline. We've established, Billy Ray, you're paying it.
Sheriff's paying it.
The sheriff's paying it. You know, I think those things already exist, and I think that's to the point of if there's a way to financially model that so that you can just transition that to another collection mechanism.
That's why I kind of lean toward that $4 if we can. That's my personal preference, hold that $4 if we can, and make up the difference on the commercial. And it's still very little compared to what commercials were going to pay earlier, so it's still.
So we went back and looked, and Chris did a lot of data mining to look at all the unincorporated areas of the county and all the businesses and the residential in the unincorporated area to see, okay, what would they have been paying in the model previously? And the sweet spot for non-residential or commercial was definitely over the $200 threshold. So I think when we looked at it, the sweet spot was, you know, closer to probably $250. And so we felt like if we can stay $200 or below for a commercial, they're still going to be saving money had we all three governments been together and done it in a different way. And obviously we want for it to be as advantageous for our citizens as possible and still maintain the service. Am I saying that correctly?
The hard part too, I mean, the hard part a little bit for me, it's in discussion here today too, is, you know, it goes back to the, you know, Okanite. I'm gonna just use Okanite as an example. I'm pretty sure Okanite is a Madison County Utilities customer. But, you know, when you brought up Union City Country Store.
They're saying in this model.
In this model, you know, does that seem fair? You know, it does not seem fair to me. Now, is it a big deal because it's the amount of money that it is? You know, is it that big a deal because it's such a small amount of money? I don't know. You know, I mean, that's up for an opinion. That's an opinion, and everybody might have one, but it just seems a little you know, unfair, I guess, unequitable a little bit, when you look at that app harvest, you know, is another example. And, you know, I think Central Kentucky Sheet Metal, you know, Central Kentucky Sheet Metal's there and, gonna pay the same as app harvest. It seems a little odd.
If you change that third model and leave the residential at $4 and change the commercial to $16.25, that makes you whole.
It breaks you even.
It makes you even. I mean, you don't have to go full 18 on commercial.
Yeah.
16.25 would make you whole. I mean, that's kind of what, that's the goal, is to be whole at the end of the day.
One other thing I want to think about, brings up the point too, Brian, is that we can't choose a rate for today
Right.
that is gonna be the potential same for tomorrow. And what I mean by that is next year. You know, the way that we're looking at doing the interlocal agreement, that each jurisdiction, county, city of Berea, city of Richmond, is going to, their fee, their cost is gonna be based on usage from each jurisdiction. So where this year, city of Richmond's 54%, 56%, county's 24, city of Berea's 20, next year, that could change.
Yeah, we could be 50.
City of Richmond, I don't know that would ever be that extreme, but city of Richmond could very easily go to 50. You know, we could go to 30. Berea could stay the same. And so I don't, you know, we always can't, which that was one reason why I like the escalator a little bit, automatic, is because if that does happen, then it automatically escalates due to the CPI. If it doesn't happen, maybe we go down, then we vote to not go up. So those are just conversation pieces.
There's all kinds of variables in that. I mean, you look at annexation. Annexation changes that some too. And that's potential.
I mean, obviously, this is all built on the 1,018,640, but I think you have to have a cushion both ways in how we, whatever we decide, and how we get at that is.
The other thing, just remember as well, is, and I want citizens to realize this too, is that it is in law that you can only use this money for 911. So this money does not go into the general fund. It is specific for 911. When this fee is collected, it automatically goes into 911 fund. It stays in the 911 fund unless, for life cycle replacements, that it goes into its own 911 investment account where it's drawn interest, because that was part of the financial model that the task force figured in, you know, trying to really be good with taxpayer dollars.
I mean, I think the best part about this whole process is that it's locally controlled. This is not something that the state is saying that you have to use this funding mechanism and you got to generate this amount of money. I mean, it's, you know, it's in our hands to change it however it suits, you know, the best interest of our county. Whether we add a CPI or whatever we do, whatever we choose, you know, it's still in our court, so to speak, to make the decision. And that's what we want. That's not, you know, we don't want somebody else telling us what to do with it. We want to be able to make that decision here.
You know what bothers me? We're talking about the unincorporated parts of the county, and that's wonderful, but the fact of the matter is, you know, the city, a big part of this city, I represent them, and I don't know what's happening to those folks. And, you know, you represent the whole city, and you know, I'm concerned about those folks. This out here in the county, this is good. I mean, this is a good proposal. That's what bothers me.
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
But we can't
we
make
got-
those decisions for the local governments.
No.
Well, I can tell you another part of that. So we're up here making our best decision for the county.
Yeah.
Guess what? I live in the city. I have no control over mine.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm gonna have to trust the councilman over in Berea
Well,
to,
you live in the city that was paying for it all the first year.
yeah, you're good the first year, but I'm gonna have to trust the councilman up there to come up with a plan that's equitable across there, and I don't have any say in that. So, I mean, I get it. But I do say this. 11 years up here has shown us that, and quite vividly with our property tax, that over the last 11 years that we've grown enough, we've reduced property tax every single year. I'm not sure that I see a CPI to add increase when we know growth's gonna happen. I mean, 11 years of history says that's gonna happen. So, I don't like the last one. I do like the 18, giving a small cushion there, $17,000 small cushion. And just to be honest with you, it doesn't matter which one of these that we pick. Hey, stay now. Been through it before. We ain't gonna please everybody. Let's get what we think that we need to do our business. This is way more equitable and fair, in my opinion, across the board than the other model was. Nobody liked it. We didn't like it. But that's where we were at. But at least this is one that everybody can stand, I think. You're gonna have the high end and the low end. The folks that were paying $25, they're not gonna be happy with it. They got a letter that says they're paying $25. They're not gonna be thrilled. But you got the other end that was going way overboard. They're gonna be tickled to death, so.
No, I
I
think,
think this is fair, because this is pretty close to what had been being paid before on the landlines.
think too, Jill, if y'all could talk a little bit about, to Tom's point, you're not gonna make everybody happy. I've already gotten some phone calls about, it's not fair to do water meters, and so can you kind of explain it? I think sometimes people think that like 911, it's like calling the fire department, and that why, if I'm a renter, why should I be having to pay for the fire department to show up at that house, to put out a fire? I don't own it, right? It should be the landlord. That's what, but can you kind of talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I
Just
think,
for the audience and just so we can, as elected officials, can hear it.
yeah, I think that, to Magistrate Watkins' point, to your point, you try to be as equitable as possible in whatever model is put out there. I think there's always gonna be people, one of the major complaints that we heard previously was that on a parcel fee, that only property owners were incurring that cost for everyone, even if it was a rental property, right? That why would they be incurring that cost, and why was their tenant not incurring that cost? So, valid point, obviously we listen. And so now you have the opposite argument from a tenant of why would I be incurring that cost, and why is the property owner not incurring that cost? Because I pay rent. And so I think that you're always gonna have both sides of the coin. I think the part that we have to remember, and I think the part that citizens need to know and understand, is this is a service that is provided. It is not, hey, because I called 911. So you're not getting charged based on calling 911. But given the ability for you to call 911, the resources it takes to get that responder there. It's not about necessarily that the fire department shows up to your address and you're paying for the fire department. You're paying for the ability to call one number and all of the infrastructure and all of the things that it takes to be able to get that provider to you as quickly as possible. The alternative, and some of you will remember this probably all too well, is there was a time in this county, and unfortunately in counties across the country, that you call a different number depending upon what your emergency is. So if you wanted the fire department, you called straight to the fire department. and you hoped and prayed that they weren't on another call and that someone answered. The same with EMS, the same with the police department, or whatever your emergency service that you needed was. And so I think that for citizens to know and understand, you know, that unified 911 number that you call and what that means to you as a citizen and the ability to do that takes resources. There is someone sitting at a console, more than one person, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that's answering that call. They're looking at the map. They're telling that responder where to go. They're telling them how to get there. They're telling them what's going on the phone. So it is not so the fire department shows up, but it is for getting them the right information so that they can provide the safety that we need as citizens. And so I think that is important for people to know and understand, that it's a little bit more than just someone automatically shows up. And I don't know if that, Judge, if that's kind of what explanation you were after, but we've gotten a lot of feedback over the course of the last couple of months about, hey, it's more fair for me this way, and it's more fair for me this way. I think the goal of the fiscal court is always, how do we be as fair and equitable as possible to the greatest number of citizens? And I think that should always be our goal.
Well, at the
And that
end
looks
of,
different for everybody.
it is, yeah, it is. At the end of the day, I think that we've got to get the interlocal agreement signed. We've got to get it drafted. It's in the process right now to the two cities. But my hope is that they would act in September on the interlocal agreement that then would allow us to act. And then at that point, we could decide what our next steps are. I'm pretty sure that if this is the route we go, I think this fee, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it has to go in front of the PSC, Public Service Commission, for, you know, I don't know if it's an approval. I don't know if it's just a signature. I mean, I know it's been before, so I don't think it's this exhaustive process, but it does have to go in front of them. So I'm sure that's going to have to take a little bit of time. One thing that, you know, I want y'all to remember is that these numbers are based on this fiscal year, which by the time that we get through this, we will probably more than likely be through 2 quarters of this fiscal year. And so, you know, these total numbers, once we start that collection, you know, we've lost out on half of it. Does that make sense? So, because the best we could probably do is that this would start in January.
Did you say we really can't do anything till these other interlocal agreements have been?
I don't think that we can do anything on this until we have a agreed upon interlocal agreement with both cities that describe that each jurisdiction is going to be responsible for their portion based on use.
What if they're not in any hurry to do anything?
Then we're gonna have a tougher decision, that it will be a different discussion for a different day. Now, the city of Richmond, you know, has already, I guess it was a resolution or an order, I don't know what they call, I can't remember.
It was
but
it was an order to,
They already voted and approved that, you know, it wasn't quite 2.4, but whatever it was, 2.4 million is to be used to the county to help operate 911. So, you know, I don't think either of our cities' intentions, well, I know both of our cities' intentions is not to not help the county financially in 911. I have no doubt that they're willing to help. I'm just saying, until we have a methodology, everybody's gonna be responsible for theirs, but I just want to get the interlocal agreement signed and approved by all three jurisdictions before we have a vote on methodology.
Jill, I know through the process that we've been through with going forward and then having to reverse course and go back, it's been brought up by some citizens, and I just wanted to ask again. So we've gone and looked for information as to what other entities within the Commonwealth of Kentucky do and how they're collecting for it and what it's based upon. Can you just kind of give that overview again so that our constituents can know that we've actually gone and looked at other people and talked to other people, and that's why we're maybe going down this road?
Yeah, I think that we talked a little bit at this, I think at the last court meeting and kind of getting to this point. But across the state, there are really, I'm going to say 4 methodologies that have been tried and tested and been to the Supreme Court, have been lawsuits filed against them, all the things. And that is obviously the landline fee, which we know is kind of become antiquated. The parcel fee, which is the methodology in which originally the task force chose. Water meter fee, which is what we're looking at today, and then an electric meter fee as well. Most common electric meter fee is maybe 1 or 2 across the state, and I think the ones who did originally choose that methodology, in talking to other center directors, and Wendy probably knows some of that, talking to center directors more than others, but the state actually provides a survey about every 2 years, and that shows exactly who collects and what they collect and what methodology they use. And so we look at that and really drive down into that. Water meter and parcel is the 2 most popular current measures. Everyone is moving away from landlines. This is not new. There's many entities and counties and joint centers across the state that have moved over the last 10 years away from that.
There's more and more every year.
And so there were about 3 last fall that moved to a parcel or to another methodology. I think Estill County is probably on about 10 years of collecting from on a water meter fee. I think that, Kenton, Campbell, Boone, they all do a parcel fee. Hardin County does a parcel fee. Shelby County does a parcel fee. And it really is based on what's best for whatever your citizenry in the fiscal court or city councils, governments sees best. But it's a mixed bag across the state, but more and more are going to the water meter or parcel fee. And I think that based on your all's conversation at the last meeting, you felt like the advantages of a water meter fee is outweighed.
Jill, did those other counties that had parcel fees, what was their methodology of collection? Did they collect on the property tax bill? How did they collect?
The majority do collect on the property tax bill. There are a couple that collect from their finance office. So they self-collect, so they do a auto billing, and they bill it out from the finance office, and they send out the mailers from the finance office, and they do the collections to the finance office and all those sorts of things. I believe Hardin County is one that I know that does it that way. I can't remember. I think there were 2 that we looked at and just trying to kind of research and find the information. Now, there are a number of communities that do more than one methodology, and I think we talked about that last time too, that's not favorable that you would do that.
But that could happen in our situation here if all 3
it could.
jurisdictions are, each jurisdiction obviously they have the authority to choose however they see what's best for their.
Yeah. I know Jessamine County charges a landline and a water meter fee on everyone throughout the county. I also know that I think it is Georgetown, it's Bourbon County, Paris, that the city of Paris charges a water meter fee, and Bourbon County has a different methodology, and maybe even Scott County, Georgetown does the same. I think the city of Georgetown charges both a water meter and a landline. So I think it, for us to be fair and equitable in the things that you all want to accomplish, I don't think doubling the methodology is something that anybody would ever dream of doing. And I think it's important that we say that because we've gotten some questions about that. Does this mean I would have to do both? And so
No,
I think it's
obviously
important.
with whatever we do, Jill, we would, I guess technically the landline, the previous ordinance took away the landline fees starting in January. But when we rescinded that ordinance, then I guess it's really technically back on,
It is reinstated.
it's reinstated. So when we pass the ordinance of what the new methodology would be, we would rescind the old ordinance which would get rid of the landline fee altogether,
Correct.
countywide, right?
Yes.
That would include even inside the city limits,
Correct.
you know.
But at least for now, that landline fee is in place through the end of the year,
Yes.
and we haven't
That-
rescinded anything yet.
That landline fee is in place until you take action to make it go away.
Right, but that was my point, is I
Yes.
want people to understand that.
I think you ought to go ahead and start working on the ordinance of this right here, and not wait on this. Don't wait on Richmond Brig, we need to get something going, not wait. That's my thing.
I agree with that, and I also think that regardless of,
Well, my fear, and I don't mean to cut you off, Tom, though, but my fear in that is that if, to your point, what if one of them doesn't act?
Yeah,
Then how do we fund 911?
well, we do like everybody else has been crying about for the last 10 years, I guess we have to decrease services.
What I'm getting at is that, to your point earlier about the city limits, citizens are our citizens too.
yeah.
We have the authority as a governing body because we're countywide.
The other part of that, and what I was gonna say was.
See what I'm
is that-
saying?
Yeah,
So, but we don't want to go that route, right? We want each jurisdiction to be responsible for their jurisdiction. And so if we get the interlocal agreement, then we can act on the unincorporated limits like we plan.
And I think at this point that we're at, the city of Richmond has acted. And I think we have
Yeah, they
to,
have.
I think we have to recognize that they have acted and said, our order, well, we will pay up to, or not to exceed, or whatever their language was, the $2.388 million for this fiscal year. So I think they have acted and determined their methodology.
But
So
our
now-
interlocal agreement still,
Pending.
the interlocal agreement though, that we voted on in January, that everybody finalized in this past January, is still the interlocal agreement that we're working under. And so for anybody to get out of that interlocal agreement, in that interlocal agreement, it says you have to give notice of so many days, correct?
Yes, and I think it also
Or we all have to
amended.
amend it. And so that's what we're working on right now, is amending that interlocal agreement. And my hope, and I feel pretty confident, that the governing bodies will act in September.
And both have indicated as such.
okay.
What about in this model that we're looking at, as far as schools and universities, where's that put them?
I think it depends on the type of water meter they have. Based in this model, if they're, if a school or a university or anyone who is tax exempt, we'll say, would be considered residential because the commercial rate has a tax on it, so they would be in the residential rate. And they would, if you're EKU, you're gonna be in the city limits, so that's not gonna apply to this. If you're Boonesboro Elementary, who is in the county, the water meter and the water bill that the Board of Education pays for Boonesboro Elementary would have, a $3.50 or $4 or whatever you all decide upon. That's what they would have on their bill, just like they have on a landline bill. So I think they're all paying that now on a landline or voice over IP or whatever, whether you're a a school or whatever. Now, we know that their usage is greater than that, but in this model, they would pay the same at Boonesboro Elementary as they do at,
And the same goes to, like, I mean, if somebody doesn't have a water meter, they don't pay.
Right.
If there's I'm sure there's some little country church out there in the county somewhere that may not have water. I remember growing up as a kid, Gilead Baptist Church, it didn't have water, had an outhouse. It does now, but
They moved uptown now.
they did. Yeah, they
well,
have.
and there's, I'm sure, residential places that may have a well or
Yeah,
a cistern
that's true.
or something of that nature that if they didn't receive a water bill, they would not receive a 911 fee.
So the church is gonna pay the residential fee.
Based on, that's how they're classified right now by all utility companies, is because they are tax exempt and that they pay, the only entities that are considered commercial based on the utility company and what's in the utility company's records is what we are going on. You only pay a commercial if you are for profit. And so, which would be a for-profit business, and that is required by state law that they pay tax on that. So that's not something we determine. I said that correctly, didn't I? Just making sure. And the utilities have been great at explaining those nuances to us that, they all pay their bill every month.
I think, and what I started to say earlier was that the key and what everybody has to bear in mind about when this is all said and done and we're finished, next year we're gonna look at it again. Next year it either goes up or it either goes down, one way or another. So it's not a one-time deal, we're finished. It's gonna be a curve any way you look at it.
I
If
think,
that's
here
what-
on.
If that's what we vote on. If you go with the route that the CPI is attached to it, and I'm not saying we should go there, then you won't have to vote on it every year, I wouldn't think.
there would be an automatic increase. The only reason you vote on it is to say we don't need it,
We don't need it, or, oh, man.
When I think if we've, and this is just obviously Jill's opinion, I think if we've learned anything over the course of the last 2 years of going through this, is exactly what you said, Tom, is no choice that you all make is going to make all 100,000 people that live here happy. But I think the more that we bring it up and the more we talk about it and the more transparent we are, I mean, obviously we're live streaming a work session. I think that
I
it
mean, we
helps.
wanted it. I
We
mean,
want people to we want feedback. It's
We
what I'm
want
trying to
feedback.
say.
That's why we're doing what we're doing.
I've got a lot of feedback on this water meter, and it's all been positive.
I think the reason we're having the discussion about it is from feedback. I mean, that's
Correct.
the whole point.
I mean, people want the service. I can't imagine that there's anybody out there, especially any female mothers or whatever, that wouldn't want the service, using that as an example. But now, if there's people out there that is purely political, then they're not gonna like it. And we can't do what's right for the citizenry based upon somebody using politics against this. That's just not what we're up here for. It's about doing what's right for the county. It's not about running for office.
And I think that's a question that, obviously, it's been 2 weeks since we proposed this, and you all asked us to get direction on how we want to move forward. I'm sure you've received some feedback. We've received some feedback in our office. We've received emails. I mean, I've received emails from churches saying, this is great, we're very pleased with this methodology. We've conversed with many citizens, so I think the feedback is what it's about in achieving ultimately how we're gonna create sustainable funding.
Hey, it was interesting. This whole process has been pretty interesting. One thing that, what we've gone through, where some pieces of it have been pretty tough with the negative comments. There is a lot of kind and nice people in our community. And there's a lot more kind and nice people in our community than there are mean and hateful.
Yes.
It's shown me that a lot. we've collected a lot of checks for 911 people. People have just sent the check. I mean, they, like in support, like it wasn't a bill. We all know that wasn't a bill, but I don't know how many checks we got. There was a local business that sent a pretty big one. That, like, absolutely, we want 911. It was local.
There's been a couple
local,
church.
local retail stores.
Yep, a couple churches, citizens. I mean, it's been across the board. And we've had a lot of, obviously, we created communication following our last meeting saying, hey, here's what's next. Stay tuned. As we work through this process, we'll update you. And
Now, we're sending those checks back. Don't think we're taking the checks.
Well, shoot.
Like, for the record.
Yeah.
We didn't
Yeah.
keep those checks. We're sending them back, but.
I mean, same example, a lady called me and said, I don't care what it costs. My husband and I use it regularly. We'll pay whatever it costs. We don't care. Even though they qualify for, less square footage than what they had. They said, we don't care about that. We don't want to do the appeal process. We think this is fair what it said at. So, I mean, there are situations like that. You don't hear those as often.
I had one citizen that offered to pay some of the complainers' bills because he thought it was that important.
Yep. Well, hopefully after today, Brian, you are correct. That's why I wanted to do a work session. We know all this stuff. We could have sent this stuff to you all, but we want this to be transparent. We want people to see it. We want people to be able to go back and listen to us and our comments and give some feedback. We know we're not going to make everybody happy.
Worst thing we could do is just come in here and vote on it. So absolutely, this is necessary, and thank you for putting it together.
So, one thing that I would like, is there anything, if one of these categories is what we go with, is there anything else that we need to make sure that if we work on a draft ordinance, is there anything else that we need to consider? Is there anything else in the ordinance that needs to be in there that you all would like to be in there?
I think it's looking good.
At the end of the day, we're trying to do the mandated things that we're supposed to do for the citizens of Madison County, whether they're in an incorporated area or not. So we just, as the entity that has to do that, we just need to do what the law says and protect. And if there's a quirk down the road, it'll just have to be addressed at that time. We can't prepare for everything.
And I'm assuming that the interlocal agreement will address the 911 board. Is that correct? Is that part of that? So there's still options there, even like previously with the other funding stream or the funding structure. There was opportunity for people to appeal to the board and to make changes as well. Is that correct?
There was, but that won't exist in this
one.
This
Okay.
model. Some of the things that we're working on with the interlocal agreement is sort of changing the budgeting process, which is understandable. Before the funding model was basically all on us, right? What we agreed to for the cities is to put it on our tax bill. So there wasn't this desire, I'll say, from either city to be part of the budget process. But now that we're kind of splitting it up, doing it 3 different ways, there is a desire. So we're writing some language in the interlocal agreement that the county judge executive shall invite. We're working on, don't know exact language, but we're working it to where that both mayors, and if they choose their administrator or city manager to participate as well, they can participate in the drafting of the budget with the county judge executive and the treasurer, which is totally acceptable. I understand that. And it's good. It's good for them to participate in the budget process of 911. Because then they don't have as many questions. They understand why something's budgeted the way they are, instead of possibly thinking that, County's just over budgeting or whatever.
Yep.
So Brian, to your point, I think that when you reference that, obviously, in the old ordinance, there was an appeal process. In this methodology, you wouldn't appeal your water meter fee because it would be flat.
Right, well, but what I was referring to was the actual board that was established. that-
And so that advisory board, there has not been any suggestion or conversation at this point from either of the cities that they would like to see that makeup any different.
Okay,
And so it would
So-
still exist.
okay, so they meet monthly, and so citizens can go before that board with any concerns still, right, with,
In operations.
yeah,
Well, that's what I was gonna say. So based on the current interlocal agreement, it is to meet at the minimum of quarterly. They choose to meet monthly so that they stay in connection, I guess you would say. It is a open meeting, follows open meeting laws, there's a public comment period, all of those things. So if they have an issue with the 911 service that they're being provided, obviously they could go to that board, similar to how you would come for public comment in a fiscal court meeting for that matter. Now, I will say this, there's times that we get emails about, somebody had trouble finding my house and EMS drove past it, or, I mean, you know, there was a addressing concern there with it being Garrett County or Madison County or whatever. And so those things come, and those are, you know, obviously handled at an administrative level. In my time, I've never had a person come to a 911 or public safety board because they have concern about the service. But they're obviously welcome to do so because the chiefs of all those agencies sit on that board and can.
And it's an open meeting.
Yeah,
It's a public meeting.
I mean, I've never seen a person come, like a citizen come, but, I mean, there's no reason they wouldn't. I mean, I don't know, Sheriff, if you've ever seen a citizen come to one and say, hey, I want the sheriff to do this differently, or I want 911 to, you know, but that's what that board is there for.
Sheriff, they probably don't come to the 911 board for that. They just come down to your office, don't they?
You know, I'd like to make just a general comment. As long as everything goes good, seems like everybody's happy. No complaints, a few complaints, but it's just like the work on the interstate, work on 25. You know, I don't know how many times people would call and would fuss about the county, and I'd say, well, it's not a county road, you know, it's a federal road, it's a state road, potholes. I mean, it's just, now that they're working on this, now they're upset because they're driving through, the intersections are more heavier now. It's just tough, and it's not going to get any better until they complete that project. The other thing, I've been doing a little work with Master Bodkin on some traffic issues around the county. And what really is so crazy about this whole thing, from, I think it was the middle of April of 2022 to today's date at 1 o'clock, we've had almost 11,000 collisions in Madison County. 11,000, close to 11,000, 10,000 something.
In
Now-
what period of time?
From April of 2022 till today's date at 1 o'clock, when we ran that
3.5
statistic,
years roughly.
Yeah.
almost 11,000 collisions. That's not thefts, missing persons, just natural calls that we get. That's a whole lot of collisions. You know, we have, I think, 446 square mile county, 1,169 highway miles, I-75 north and south, 7 exits. I mean, there's a lot of traffic. But it seemed like we didn't have all these issues until they started the road work, until 911, the money coming from the government to support that. Now, it just seems like everybody's up in arms on some of these issues.
To that point, look how much better Duncannon is now. Look how much better the 52 connector is now versus, you know, when all that was going through and all the complaints we used to get about all that traffic out through there, it's all gone. It just takes time. Your point, Sheriff, it takes time. Judge, back on track, are we going with $4 and $18? Is that where we landed?
I mean, it's obviously the pleasure of the court of how you all want to go about it. I actually have thought about, just sitting here while we've talked, you know, sometimes we'll put a 1, 2, 3 in our ordinance, you know, we choose which one that day. I think with hearing y'all's feedback, I think we can sort of take some of those and give some time, everybody to think about it.
I'd like for you to massage it a little bit more. I'm not convinced those are the two numbers that we need. I'm not convinced they aren't. I'm just saying, we've just looked at them today. We need to make sure that everything's covered. And last thing I want to do is come back and have to ask for an increase later.
Yeah. Yeah, my hope, you know, obviously selfishly, my hope was to keep it at 350, you know, the residential
Yeah.
piece, because that's what,
That'd tickle me.
you know, people been paying for, since, I think, 2008, right? Isn't that when it went to 350, 2008 on landline?
If you just leave it 350, what would the commercial rate need to be to get up to break it? I'd like to see that.
You know, I think a lot of times, I mean, obviously as elected officials, I mean, we have to do the right thing, right? We always have to do the right thing. But we also have to try to do what is best for the majority of people. And so you got to find that sort of happy medium. You know, I don't want to be excessive to business by no means. Our business is very important for our community. But at the same time, businesses are also paying other fees, you know, so.
If you got 50 cents a month, it's gonna make or break your household. You got way bigger problems than what this is gonna be. I can tell you that right now.
You're right,
I
Tom.
think we don't need to go back to that discussion.
Yeah.
Well, what we have to realize too, and it hasn't been said yet, well, I think maybe it has, was inferred, but this model, which seems to me to be the model we need to support, unless somebody comes up with something better, you know, there's property owners that aren't paying because we don't have any way to bill them. Because the other model didn't work some places, so.
Then, I mean, same token, you've got property owners that's gonna pay twice.
Yeah.
Because they've got 2 meters.
Yeah.
I do, my house.
Yeah.
I got a meter for my barn, I got one for my house.
So Magistrate Hughes, to your point, 2675 would be what it would take on a commercial. Which, would-
How much was that?
for, if you did 350 on residential, it'd be 2675 to be fully funded. I mean, actually, $105, but it's pretty close.
I don't know, you probably can't do it right now. Well, you can, Chris probably can, but if you did it based on call volume, I mean, percentage of call volume, residential and commercial, what does that come out to be? Because that was the original model that we went with, and based on
Call, yeah.
Call volume.
Residential is a lot greater in the county.
Well, I think we have about 82% residential parcels
Yeah.
versus, I mean, and in the water meter is, I haven't done the math as far as percentage of total that are residential versus commercial, but I think that the ratio is going to make you have more calls to residential homes because it's so imbalanced. I mean, if it's just the 80-20 rule, you're not ever gonna probably make up that difference in number of commercial calls based on such an extreme number of residential meters. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we don't have that many commercial.
We just
properties.
don't have enough that, make up that difference, and I think that's why when you do things in the aggregate, your data is different than it is individually.
It's more, we're Because when a commercial building catches on fire, it's not one police officer, one fire truck. Not that that's what you're paying for, but they're gonna be communicating with 4 or 5 trucks and 4 or 5 police officers and 2 or 3 ambulances, right? The taxing of the system
It's
is
not
going
one,
to be far greater than responding to a residential home.
it's not one dispatcher. And I think about, I mean, this was before my time, but Scott, Chris, I mean, you all know, Judge, the mulch fire that happened up at exit 97. I mean, think about the resources from a dispatch communication standpoint that took over the course of a week.
That was multi-agency.
And that, I mean, and so that is in Madison County. So our dispatch center handled all of those agencies, even the ones coming from outside of the county, and all of the agencies inside of the county, and the resources that took for that property. And I think that's, again, that's a risk. That probably took more resources than, you know, the Dollar General.
All right. All right, anything else? Any other discussion for today on this topic? So we'll go back and work on a draft ordinance, Jill. We'll be prepared for upcoming meeting in the next month and a half to be able to move forward. All right? Our next meeting is next Tuesday, August 26, 2025, right back here in Richmond. It'll be 9:30 a.m. Next meeting, August 26, 2025, back here in Richmond. Appreciate everybody being here today. Need a motion and second to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Commissioner Lockmiller,